Hello, welcome to part 2 of chapter 1 of the Elemental Witchcraft book, my book from the Willen, and our video class on the content of chapter 1. So last night we left off just before page 27. So if you're following along in your book, page 27, defining panentheism. So there's a lot of terms in religion, and there are so many ways of being a neo-pagan, being a witch. Everybody's got a different idea about their ism, and that's fine. They are all beautiful. They are all facets of looking at divinity and engaging with divinity. But I consider the sort of witchcraft that I'm offering here in the Pentacle Path to be panentheism, and I'd like to define that really thoroughly for everyone. So first of all, let's go through some terms. Monotheism, the belief in one God responsible for the creation, maintenance, and judgment of all things. So the invasive orthodoxies that we were talking about in the first part of this lesson tend to be monotheistic. Duotheism, characterized as having two main aspects along a polarity, often an equally powerful God and goddess. Polytheism, a belief in many distinct gods and goddesses who can exist within a collective pantheon, but also have individual agency. Animism, a belief that natural forces, natural objects, and phenomena have individual spirits. Pantheism, a belief that divinity is immanent within nature. That means that the matter of nature is divine. Everything exists as a manifestation of an unknowable and impersonal spirit. Here's the difference. Panentheism, a belief that divinity is both immanent within nature, all matter of the cosmos, but also has a transcendent consciousness with whom we may interact personally. Divinity interpenetrates every part of the cosmos and extends timelessly beyond it. Therefore, everything in the cosmos has a spirit and is interconnected at a fundamental level. People, plants, minerals, animals, stars, planets, all the individual deities, all the individual spirits, all beings of spirit. So anything you've ever heard of, angels, gnomes, sylph, salamander, we can name all the elementals, are all aspects of divinity, which is fundamentally benevolent. Benevolent in that it's neutral good. Now, that view leaves nothing out. It is whole. It is complete. It is what Wiccans might call perfect. There are no exclusions to what is sacred and divine. So if you keep driving down that road of thought, you arrive at the truth that no part of the cosmos could possibly be separated from divinity. Therefore, all humans are also part and parcel of that divinity. We're all gods and goddesses in some small way. Congratulations! You are a goddess, you are a god, you are divine. We couldn't possibly be cast out from the presence of divinity, no matter how poor our choices. Damnation would not be possible. Life is not a cosmic death match to win the dream vacation. That is my favorite quote from the book, by the way. If when I die, quote me with that. Life is not a cosmic death match to win the dream vacation. Best of all, because we are interconnected to ultimate cosmic power, we can work cooperatively as co-creators. It is this linkage and partnership throughout the divine universe by which a matriarchal cooperator culture is empowered. So each ism that we just talked about, that is a puzzle piece in the greatest occult mystery of all. what is the meaning of life? What is this hokey pokey all about? So panentheism attempts to describe the entire puzzle picture, the ineffable, or that which is beyond human comprehension, that it can't really be put into words. So panentheism reconciles all of our various philosophies and experiences, personal revelations, personal moments of gnosis. They can all fit together as we navigate our spiritual path and be simultaneously true-ish. So it's, to me, it's the very largest concept of divinity that would contain all the rest, or make all the rest of them, all the rest of the perspectives valid in their own unique perspective. This is part of the reconciling of the divine paradox, which we're going to talk about a lot in this book. So the etymology of panentheism means all in God. It is from the ancient Greek, but it was termed in, this term was coined in 1828 by a German philosopher named Karl Christian Friedrich Krauss. He lived from 1781 to 1832. So it's formed primarily from the Greek Neoplatonic philosophies, which is, that's a cornerstone of Hermeticism, which therefore becomes a cornerstone of elemental witchcraft. It also aligns with much of ancient Hindu and Buddhist thought. So these are not new concepts. They are not unique to Western esoteric philosophy or to witchcraft at all, which to me makes it part of the isness. There's so much of this in these other philosophies. And so when, Krauss was formulating these ideas, he was pulling from many traditions. So this idea of panentheism that came about at the time of Krauss heavily influenced New England transcendentalists like Ralph Waldo Emerson. You may have heard of him. And the New Thought movement, which was emerging from spiritualism in that time. The concept of panentheism did not originate with modern witchcraft. It is not unique to us. The notion that the goddess is manifest within nature is repeated throughout our founding witchcraft texts of the 20th century. So even in some of the early books that I read and that inspired me, they described divinity in this way. They would then maybe go on to say that what they were presenting was polytheism or some other idea, but the roots, the threads were still there. The definition was still there. So, for example, here's a passage by Starhawk in the classic Spiral Dance, which is, should be required reading if you'd like to know what the foundations of how Wicca in America emerged in the 80s especially. So she says, the goddess is not separate from the world. She is the world, and all things in it. Moon, sun, earth, star, stone, seed, flowing river, wind, wave, leaf, and branch, bud and blossom, fang and claw, woman and man, in witchcraft, flesh and spirit are one. That is a very panentheist idea. In the liturgical poem arranged by Doreen Valiente called The Charge of the Goddess, witches are informed directly that the goddess is nature and that this divine nature is calling us home. So here's another quote from that poem. I, who am the beauty of the green earth and the white moon among the stars and the mysteries of the waters and the heart's desire, call unto thy soul. Arise and come unto me. So to acknowledge that this tangible stuff of nature is divine, to me it's easy because it requires no faith on our part. It is right here. You can go hug the tree. You can feel the wind. Nature just is. Trees grow, winds blow, seasons change, regardless of whether any human believes in them or views them. When something dies and it falls in the forest, it decomposes and becomes rich new soil, which feeds the new seeds in the next season. This is just the way of nature. So much of Hermetic philosophy and the natural panentheism that forms our philosophy is about observing what happens in nature and then extrapolating that to the above of spirit and what happens in the movement of a larger spiritual flow. Okay, so spelling goddess theology into modern form. If you're reading in the book, we've talked about some of my spelling conventions as a means to transform our conversation and transform the ideas in the world that we are creating through our ideas. So I just wanted to make a note about some of my choices and why I have done so. So within panentheistic witchcraft, obviously words like nature, universe, cosmos, great spirit, divine mind, source, often called the all, or the one only one in Hermetics, they become interchangeable words for the wholeness of divinity, and they have their own transcendent consciousness. But with an aggregate agency. And by that I mean that all the various forms of divinity each has its spark of consciousness and agency, but then all together in a synergistic way, there is this aggregate agency, this aggregate consciousness that takes on a whole new greatness. So Wiccans often focus on the interplay of the great goddess and the great god. It's a shorthand proper names in their invocations and prayers. Thus, these words are reverentially capitalized in the book, as if they're names, but we're really referring to a whole category of divinity. Christopher Penczak proposed in his works to call them the two who move as one in his Temple of Witchcraft series, and when we've studied with him in person here in Greenville. I have lovingly adopted this title. I love it. I love calling Great Goddess and God the two who move as one, because that reminds me that they are mirror reflections of a greater divinity, the full range of divinity. So for my own shorthand and as an intentional act of magic, I write their title as the God/DESS, goddess. And when I'm reading that or saying that out loud, I've been purposefully trying to retrain myself to say goddess. If I'm just talking about goddess as a female entity, I would say goddess. But when I'm talking about them both together, I try to put that emphasis goddess, as if I'm referring to both. But again, not dual, the full spectrum. I just want to be reminded and continue to affirm at all times that divinity is inclusive of all gender, all possibility, all phases of the cycle of life. Goddess to me is a title referring to their infinite names and identities. And so I will refer to goddess with plural pronouns. They are goddess, for example. Similarly, a discussion on this religion of the goddess would be theology with an A. I'm sure you've noticed in all these places that I don't spell it with an O, theologie, which is how you would mostly see it. That word is derived from the French, theologie, and it came about in discussions of Christian doctrine hundreds of years ago. It is specifically, if you look at the root words from Greek, theos is male divinity. And so they were looking at religion from the perspective of their male, exclusively male Christian God. That's theology or theology. Theos, from the Greek with an A, is a discussion of the God, feminine, inclusive of the feminine. But much like a pregnant woman who's bearing a son, feminism includes everybody. Let's just put it that way. It's not about the study of women and women's needs. It's about equality of the human condition, which includes everyone in an equal and fair way. So Theos is inclusive. It's a more inclusive word. And so any discussion of this doctrine, any discussion of this philosophy would have to be inclusive. And so to sort of spell that change into reality, I always refer to it as theology. Spelling does create change. It is magic. Writing things with symbols to create words which invoke ideas, that is magic. So I think spelling is important. I'm one of those Virgo people. Well, my moon and rising are in Virgo. Okay, so defining modern witchcraft. We've done a lot of this already, but let's just get into it a little bit more. So it's a relative newcomer to the neo-pagan scene. It's still coalescing into form, which is, like I said, it's pretty new. This whole thing is pretty new, and we're still working out the kinks. We're still figuring out who we are and what we're about. Pardon me. So we know that this tradition that I'm presenting in this book is syncretized. It's an applied practice from the threads of Wicca and traditional witchcraft, which emerged from Britain. But it is also interwoven with ancient pagan mythology, folk magic practices, and the occult sciences and ritual techniques that we derived from Hermetic alchemy. We keep the romantic witching aesthetics of old world mystery. We burn incense. We love our bubbling cauldrons. Brooms, which we call a besom or besom, candlelight. Oh, everything is better in candlelight. And we love the enchanting spells and chants and rhyming couplets that just trigger some spiritual romance deep in our souls. But we ditch the dualism. We ditch the patriarchal colonization, sexism. We have no room for homophobia or transphobia. We have no room for unquestioning hierarchical obedience. That is not present in my modern witchcraft. Thus the word modern. So this reclaimed neo-paganism feeds a deep ancestral yearning for mystery and meaning. I don't know about y'all, but in my life, in my adult life, I have been searching for meaning. I need all this struggle and challenge and difficulty to mean something. I need it to be part of a greater understanding of something. Without that, I find the whole endeavor rather hopeless and depressing. So in my quest for finding what that meaning is, this is where I arrive. This is what keeps me getting up in the morning and doing what needs to be done and taking care of myself and seeking out the pleasure and the wisdom and knowledge of experience in this middle world. However, we are no longer the peoples of an ancient society. The old gods are not static. They do not stand still. They are not frozen in time. Everything in nature is evolving. Therefore, our practices are intended to suit the needs of an evolving people in partnership with that evolving divinity so that we can solve our modern problems. So I would like to go through like bullet points the defining characteristics of modern witchcraft, our influences, which are syncretic and eclectic, which result in what we call an orthopraxy. Orthopraxy means right practice. It is another form that is not orthodoxy. Orthodoxy is what we're most familiar with in the modern world. The invasive orthodoxies, the what you would consider, Christianity, Islam, they are based in what you believe, right belief. So they would be considered orthodoxy. So to consider yourself a member of, say, Christianity or Islam or even Judaism, it is defined by saying this is what we believe. And if you believe these things also, you're part of our team. We don't really care about that so much in witchcraft or neo-paganism. It's not defined by what you believe as much as what you do. There are practices. And if you do the practices, then you will come to figure out what you believe on your own. They will become self-evident once you experience things with these techniques. So what's beautiful is that, you know, you could get a room of 100 witches practicing the techniques, having their personal experiences, who come back and share what those are, and you'll find that there's a stunning similarity on what is discovered, which is how we get to the isness. But it really isn't about someone telling you what you're supposed to think or believe. There are recommended practices which you then may choose to employ. So that makes us an orthopraxy. But our orthopraxy is intended to reclaim our personal sovereignty and internalizing control of our lives. That's the whole purpose of the whole thing. So let's go through the bullet points of what makes this unique. This will help all of y'all discern whether or not this is something you want to continue messing with. If you don't like any of these points, then you know, if they seem wrong to you or offensive in any way, then this probably won't make you happy. And like I said in the beginning of this lesson, it's about being happy. It's about being fulfilled and successful and creating a world that we can all enjoy together. So let's just go through it. So syncretic and eclectic. What does that mean? So if you dig down to the roots, you'll find that every major world religion and every flavor of ancient paganism and witchcraft are both syncretic and eclectic. If someone tells you otherwise, they need to get into their history a little bit deeper, and they'll realize that that is not particularly true. So this is what I learned from Modern Witchcraft founders by their example, if not by creed. When I studied the history of the craft, when I studied the autobiographies or the biographies of the founders and where their ideas came from, I see that they used syncretism. They were eclectic in what they cobbled together, and then they gave it a new name, and then presented that special blend like the secret sauce of their tradition to others, and you know, and that's just how they built it. Okay, so syncretism results from the attempt to blend and reconcile varying and sometimes opposing principles and practices within philosophy and religion. And eclectic means keeping what one considers to be the best elements, not following any one particular system, instead forging a new system from many parts. So, you know, it's okay to look at a system and go, you know, I think this is beneficial. This aspect is beneficial. Like, for example, when a Christian, the good kind, reads the story of Jesus's works and goes, I see someone who is compassionate and loving and healing and accepting, who included everyone, and that's the part I'm going to keep. The part I don't want to keep is any notion that women are inferior, or any notion that that you have to oppress and deny sovereignty to gay people, for example. And some sects tend to have those ideas. You can say, nope, that does not appeal to me at all. And so I'm not going to do that part. That would be being eclectic. I'm keeping the good parts. I'm letting the old parts go. Same thing can be true of witchcraft. There are some old traditions of witchcraft that had ideas that were very dualistic, that perhaps had no room for homosexuality in their practice or their belief of the world, and so that is limiting to them. But you can come along and go, you know, but I found something else beautiful in that tradition, and I'm going to keep that, and I'm going to let the other part go. To me, this is evolving. Okay, the next part, and as we just talked about, orthopraxy versus orthodoxy. So we're defined by what we do. rather than what we believe. So the emphasis is on the craft of doing and making and experiencing. So that orthodoxy thing, we don't do that. We don't tell you what you have to believe. So witchcraft does offer time-tested techniques through which you'll be challenged to think for yourself. In the comments from the early parts of this lesson, I'm finding that many of you also agree that it's good to encourage independent thought, encourage critical thinking, building your own path, to test drive these things till the wheels fall off, till you drive it somewhere that makes you comfortable. So through these experiences, we experience divine revelation. A witch can discover what they believe on their own. It's really more, I think all this witchery is more about personal empowerment right here and now rather than worrying over the aesthetics of the thing. I think it's more important than worshiping the old gods. I know, blasphemy. Y'all don't come after me with the pitchforks, please. But I think that is more important in modern witchcraft than those considerations. I think it's even more important than what happens when we die. Those things aren't unimportant, but they are secondary considerations in modern witchcraft. So a witch's life is like poetry to me. It's the poetry of meaningful presence. All metaphors, whatever metaphor makes your heart sing, makes you feel connected to nature, connected to divinity, to each other, that is divine. Within modern witchcraft, we may each write a new poem with our lives. That enacted poetry is the great work of magic, which also transforms our culture. Y'all have to forgive me in all my babbling about poetry, but I trained in creative writing starting in high school. I went to a special fine arts high school in creative writing. Poetry was my entry point to spirituality. When I first had my awakenings to this new way of thinking and being when I was 13, I started to tell that story in brief in the introduction. Maybe someday I'll tell it in detail. But after that, poetry was how my feelings, my emotions, how I expressed myself. And at certain points in high school, it occurred to me in this flash of divine revelation that poetry was more than words on paper. The words on paper were just a sort of magical sigil to try to capture a moment, to try to capture a connection, an awareness of the interrelated beauty of the world or struggle or whatever we're talking about, and that our lives were meant to be poetry. And so it wasn't just words, it's what we did, it's how we lived, it's how we saw the world, how we moved through it. And that the religion that always sparked me was Wicca, because Wicca is enacted poetry. It is things you do in a greater outwardly expressed theater of life that is poetry to help you connect to that level, that deeper level of interaction and awareness. I think witchcraft should have an internal consistency that makes sense, no faith required. It holds as a moral imperative that witches take nothing at face value. The very definition of occult is that there is hidden wisdom to be found beneath the obvious. We learn to trust our own perceptions and experiences. We can take confidence in that growing power. We can take confidence from our accomplishments along the journey, and then we forge a personal craft of our own. It's all about what you do. I've seen people commenting on, Pantheist articles and, online conversations in pagan spaces. And I have been astonished by how many people who would fight to the death that there is no occultism in their paganism. But all occult means is hidden wisdom. that there's some deeper meaning, some deeper power. If you believe that there is a spirit within everything, or a spark of consciousness within everything, kind of an animist thing, that this tree is alive and has a consciousness, and if I drink the leaves of this plant, there is not just a medicinal quality that might help me, but a spiritual quality that might help me. That's occultism. Any idea of nature that does not, that includes its sacredness from some spiritual point of view, does have that hidden meaning. That's the hidden meaning. So occult shouldn't be a really scary word. It shouldn't imply anything specific necessarily. There are many things that, fall under the realm of occult, but occult just means hidden wisdom. Okay, next point. Personal sovereignty. Very important to witchcraft, especially modern witchcraft. So witchcraft reclaims sovereignty over our own lives and spirits. It's about repossessing for ourselves what the invasive orthodoxies long ago colonized and tried to take from us. We take authority over our own minds, hearts, bodies, and lives. With our ritual practices, we calibrate our moral compass to this higher divine guidance. This way, we grow into spiritual maturity and heal the wounds inflicted on us by this dominator culture. So once we shift into the mindset of cooperation, nurturing and compassion among equals, sovereign witches are ready to step up as co-creators of a re-enchanted world. We are prepared to tear down the aberrant structures that would further oppress us. In this new age, and I do use that sparingly and carefully, a partnership with Goddess emerges again, and the impediments of social class, religion, gender, race, ethnicity, ability, and custom are dissolved. With our sentience, human witches are like the priesthood of the animal realm. So this is important. And I got this concept originally in a talk by Christopher Penczak. I can't remember where. I've basically followed him around for a couple of years. He came to the Sojourner 3 times in, I believe, starting in 10 or 11. And, and the last visit was in 12. Anyway, he, 16. His last visit was in 16. Anyway, he mentioned one time that the trees were like the priests of the plant realm, and that mountains were the priests of the mineral realm, and humans were the priests of the animal realm. And together, this diverse priesthood enters into service to protect nature as defenders and caretakers, as weavers of the interconnected web of life. That sovereignty extending to care of more than just oneself, but also the interconnected web all around us. Okay, next point, internalizing the locus of control. So in our neo-pagan cooperator culture, we are reclaiming the agency that is our goddess given right. In the social sciences, agency refers to, quote, the thoughts and actions taken by people that express their individual power. Agency is the power people have to think for themselves and act in ways that shape their experiences and life trajectories. Within psychology, the locus of control refers to the location of where we believe the source of control over our lives originates. Is it within me or outside of me? So this concept of the locus of control was first introduced in the 1950s by a psychologist named Julian Rotter. It's a simple idea, but it holds really big significance in the way that it influences a person's beliefs. And what you believe to be true about yourself, about the world, your place in it, can be very, it's either going to be enabling or limiting to what you think you can accomplish. So the patriarchy purposefully installs an external locus of control. That's the belief that outside forces are calling the shots and you have no say in the matter. So like a leaf being tossed about on the wind, you might think you're helplessly pushed around by forces beyond your control. If you like where and how the wind blows you around, you may consider yourself blessed. If you don't like what's happening, then you can conveniently blame that force for whatever awful thing is victimizing you, and you might think that you are cursed. Excuse me. LaCroix limoncello. My favorite of the bubbly waters. So this externalized control could be a belief that there is an outside force called God or some predestined fate. You might be blaming it on a generational curse. You could blame the government. Well, in a lot of cases, you're right. You could blame it on mind controlling aliens. Some chip you're unaware of that came in through a vaccine. Not likely. But anyway, because we can create our reality based on our own thoughts, you might be unwittingly fulfilling your own prophecy and handing over all your power to this outside force, to this imagined controller. Even the good things you accomplish would still be attributed to that outside force. Then you would never take responsibility for your own life, but that this is a powerlessness that is required to keep dominators of the invasive orthodoxies in control. On the other hand, if you believe that you hold the control over your own life, that is called an internal locus of control. If you know you are master of your own destiny and have the necessary power to create the life you choose, then that is the reality you will manifest. You make your own choices. But here's the problem. You got to live with your own consequences. You are also allowed to claim your own victories. If your elemental witchcraft accomplishes one thing, use it to internalize control of your spiritual journey. Shift your mindset from powerless victim to powerful victor in full possession of your beautiful life. So that's basically what all of the exercises in section 3 are designed to do. So that's another one of our goals. All right. Let's shift now and talk a little bit more about the path of return. If you remember, and I do have a graphic we can look at for this. We talked yesterday. Let's see if I can get it on here. Ta-da! We talked yesterday about the Pentacle paths. This is a picture in the book that you can find, but this was one of my original sketches of it before Mickey Muller redid it for us so beautifully. The path of return is symbolized as that circle around the outside. Each stroke of the pentacle that leads from one element to another has its mystery lessons and its paradoxes that we reconcile along the path. But the circle around the outside is the path of return. This is a concept that we inherit from Hermetic alchemy. So, practicing any witchcraft tradition and working through a book like this one is a lot like following an established map. They are very handy artifacts from those who've trod the path before us, but we know that change to the landscape is inevitable through time and the experience is unique to the traveler. This is why it's impossible to just read an old book about however some witch did something in the 1950s or 60s, or how Agrippa did things in the 1600s or any other source, because the social landscape, everything about the world and their culture was different. And so that map suited their journey through that landscape, but that's not where we live anymore. We can start with the maps that other travelers left for us, but slavishly retracing their steps is at best just empty religiosity. At worst, it becomes meaningless fundamentalism. As I mentioned in the introduction, I left a fundamentalist religious upbringing, and so I'm very sensitive when I feel like we're bumping up against pagan kinds of fundamentalism, which are rife within the pagan community, I promise. We can stack all these various mystical, magical, religious, scientific, philosophical, and occult maps on top of each other, but if you shine the divine light of possibility through them and look for what is both internally consistent and useful, that's how we can do this with open-minded exploration. Through trial and error, we can triangulate our way to the isness of our personal universe. That's how we will discover goddess within ourselves. So with a map metaphor, it's like the X marking the spot where treasure can be found. We still have to follow the clues, make the trip, dig it up for ourselves. For me, that X marks the spot is the secret door which opens upon the land of youth. That is the holy grail of immortality that the goddess speaks of in her charge. So the long road of exploration is what completes the pinnacle path of return. A return back into proper relationship with the goddess of nature is a first step, and into your empowerment as a fully actualized witch. That is a return. For a practical witchcraft in this current life, our path begins at the crossroads of our spirit, earth, air, fire, and water, which is found at the core of our being. So if you noticed in this image, the core of our being around our navel. This is the symbol for Earth, the planet Earth. It's also the symbol of Wiccan first degree initiation. It is the crossroads of spirit. It's another way of writing a pentacle. If you consider that the circle around is like spirit, and then there's, the four quarters, and where they intersect in the middle, that is our tent. That's where we cast our circle. That's our temple. But it's also the center point of you. You are your own temple. That is the X that marks the spot on the map. That's where we're headed. This ancient system that we're about to embark upon, it internalizes the three loci, plural for location, of power. The three loci of power. So, we're getting into a little psychology here. Now, mind you, I'm not a clinical psychologist. I took that one psychology class in college, like, you have to take. But I am a fan of some Carl Jung. I love to read it. And I've done some research in this. The three loci of control. Of power, pardon me. The three loci of power. The first one is control. The locus of control over our physical lives. 2, the locus of authority. To trust our instincts and make sound choices for ourselves. Who's in charge of you? You're in charge of you. 3, the locus of security that is felt along with self-confidence and empowerment, which is gained when divine power is rediscovered within ourselves. So it's kind of a 3-step process. You take control of your physical life. You start to make choices for yourself, which is, internalizing your own authority. I know my mind. I know my heart. I know what I believe and what I need and want, and I'm going to act accordingly. I'm in charge of me. which brings a sense of security, because the more you feel like you're in charge of you and you feel empowered and that you have the skills and tools you need to take care of yourself no matter what happens, that brings self-confidence. And that divine empowerment helps you to gain confidence in your life, that you're safe, that you can take care of yourself. The charge eloquently advises, and I'm going to paraphrase this in the modern language, know that seeking and yearning will avail you not unless you know this mystery. If that which you seek you find not within yourself, you will never find it outside of yourself. So internalizing the loci of power becomes the most important tool the most important goal a witch can set for themselves. Okay, so witchery for the 21st century. I conclude that this form of modern witchcraft is the emerging spirituality that can empower us for the necessary solutions toward the 21st century problems that we've inherited from the dominator culture. Pardon me. So these problems are things like sexual repression, gender inequality, homophobia and transphobia, toxic masculinity. Gosh, it will help with some toxic masculinity. And toxic femininity. Exploitation and violence towards women and children. Systemic racism. We'll tear that right down. The resurgence of authoritarianism and fascism with continual warmongering. The threat of global annihilation at the push of a button. And our growing mental and physical healthcare crisis. It'll help with the inevitable doom of environmental pollution and climate change. Well, we hope. We hope there's enough time to actually turn that around. So, as we'll explore in this course, the neo-pagan culture, which is founded in loving partnership with the goddess, would be fundamentally progressive and cooperative. It mirrors the vision of the intersectional feminist movement. And the ethics of panentheistic theology require that we preserve our environment. If all of nature is sacred, if nature is the goddess, then surely we shouldn't be trashing it. It also offers equal compassion for all genders, sexes, races, sexual orientations, and all our neighbors. It would offer us all the full participation in the dream of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So, seems like an American ideal to me. Democratic ideal, or a social democrat idea at the very best. It's best stated in the concluding sentence of The Chalice and the Blade by Riane Eisler. She envisions the potential future world of the goddess where, and here's a quote, our drive for justice, equality, and freedom, our thirst for knowledge and spiritual illumination, and our yearning for love and beauty will at last be freed. And after the bloody detour of our patriarchal history, both women and men will at last find out what being human can mean. There's the dream. So getting started. I talk a lot in the remaining pages of the book, and I'm not going to read them all out, that it's important to get a book of mirrors. Now, your book of mirrors is your journal. I recommend a composition notebook or something cheap and easy to get, something you don't mind scribbling in. This is just a composition notebook I found apparently at TJ Maxx, because the sticker's still on the back. Often I'll like to take the pictures from old wall calendars, witchy art, and decorate the fronts of composition notebooks. So here's one of my ones from a calendar from Stephanie Long. I love her art. Anyway, it doesn't matter what it is. It's your book of mirrors. And it's like leaving yourself breadcrumbs as you tread the wheel of the year. Every day's entry should have a notation about where the sun is astrologically and where the moon is. And I love the app Time Passages. I'll just pull it up on my phone while I'm drinking my coffee and making some notes. I'll make notations about my dreams or weird things that have been happening, special things, interactions with animals or with friends, unexpected messages, where I'm at in my menstrual cycle, how I was sleeping, how have been feeling. And then as you tread the wheel and as you go back and you look, you begin to see patterns forming. Did I have a particular feeling or state of mind that is similar the last time the moon was in this sign, for example, so that you can begin to map out how you personally ebb and flow with the tides. And also you can refer back to things and see how you've grown. I do critical thinking skills, very important. So I'm just going to read this part. Since any book on witchcraft worth its pulp won't tell you what to believe, it's up to you to apply these methods along with critical thinking skills and figure out what you believe on your own. Sadly, our modern society actively discourages critical thinking. I encourage you to question everything about your world, existence, and spirituality. Dissect it, rearrange it, and test drive it till the wheels fall off. Dismiss what offends your soul, as they say, and then repeat the things that ring true for you. Choose to dive deeply into the why of the things you do, both spiritual things and mundane things. This starts with critically re-examining what you consume and how you engage with society. In order to delete the insidious patriarchal programming we've all received since birth, we have to make a fresh study of all of our assumptions, actions, and motivations in life. Then only keep what is aligned with our moral compass and is internally consistent. Then we do what is effective and beneficial for our lives as sovereign beings. In order to discover what is most effective, we have to study, experiment, and then record our findings. These journal entries are how we'll keep the process of spiritual evolution constantly honing us into powerful witches. You'll find that the fact that I've got a bachelor's of science in a design field means that I have a rather scientific and technical approach to things quite often, but those things work. They work. That's why we do them. So, since witchcraft is an orthopraxy, meaning right action, it is critical that witches actually do the things. Simply reading this book won't get you nearly as far as putting it into practice. Neither will mindlessly following instructions without dissecting how they affect your life. So investigate how these witchy practices affect you. This is magic. Whatever you write down is going to be subjective. There are no wrong answers in a journal entry. Do not censor yourself. You can let your divine mind flow in a stream of consciousness. Nevertheless, you still have to subject your experiences to scrutiny. Otherwise, what is the point of doing it? So, magical handwriting. There's a whole field of science called haptics that has proven that if you pick up a pen and you write things down in handwriting, it creates neural pathways. The process it takes to have a thought, to translate that thought into the symbols, which are, the alphabet, arrange them into words. It travels down your arm, translates that out, puts it on the paper. All of that will physically change you. It is very important that you write things down. It is not the same if you use a voice recorder. It's not the same if you type it on a keyboard. Sometimes these old world witchy ways, these things that seem analog and antiquated and old-fashioned, sometimes they can be the cure you need for this fast-paced, modern, techie world where things seem to be like quicksand always. Every time you open your phone, there's some update and everything's different. But when you write it down, when you write something down with a pen on paper, it's visceral in a way that is very old-fashioned, yes, but it is very helpful. So please give it a try for me. This is magic. We're going to talk about all kinds of sigil making and all sorts of magical things. Well, even the English alphabet is a sigil set. And we create with these words. And we put them together in certain forms. And we can make new things happen. So, that daily entry, your homework, is to get your Book of Mirrors and to every day begin recording a little bit. It can be what you thought about this class, what you thought about what you read recently in the book, or what other things you're reading. Questions, write down questions. What seemed hinky to you? What seemed inspiring to you? Do a little bit more research. So, maybe it's a diary / class notebook. It can be all in one. This would not necessarily be a book of shadows. That is, very formal things like written out rituals and lore, factoids, recipes, that kind of thing. This is your personal journal. So I recommend that you get one and begin making some sort of entry every day if you can. And then we're going to get together for the next class and move forward in our practice in upcoming videos. I thank you for watching. If you found value in this content and you are able, we at the Sojourner are recommending a sliding scale love donation of between $5 and $15 per class. And that is if you're able. If you are unable, or if that's a hardship at this time, just pay it forward in some other nice way in the world, or we hope to have your patronage in some other way in the future. Remember that you can find my signed book and all of the assorted things you need for this practice at thesojo.com, which is our website, and we can ship anywhere in the U.S. Every little bit helps me there. Also, if you have enjoyed the book and you would have something complimentary to say about it, I would appreciate your review on the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Goodreads, and anywhere else that takes book reviews. That helps me immensely. Thank you very much for watching. Again, I'm Heron Michelle of the Sojourner Whole Earth Provisions in Greenville, North Carolina, author of Elemental Witchcraft, a guide to living a magical life through the elements, and I thank you for watching. See you next time.